This industry has tailwinds for the first time, not headwinds.
I want to ask you about the crypto stockpile, about the choices they made.
The reason that those were actually brought up.
The SBR and digital assets initiative was signed into executive action a couple of weeks ago. What is the timeline of implementation?
This is what we need to do to deliver on the president's promises to welcome in the golden age for digital assets in the United States, to make the United States the crypto capital of the planet. We certainly want to acquire more. I've had people ask me, how much do you guys want to have? I'm like, that's like asking a country how much gold they want to have.
The only thing I want to know about Trump, does he...
We're here now with Bo Hines at the Digital Assets Summit. He's the Executive Director of the President's Council of Economic Advisors on Digital Assets. I'm David Lin. This is Bonnie Chang. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Bo.
I want to ask you about the crypto stockpile, about the choices they made. What's the rationale behind ADA, Solana, Ethereum?
Well, first, I think we should talk about the SBR first, and it's kind of how, why we set it up the way that we did. I mean, we view Bitcoin as being unique. Bitcoin is a commodity, not a security. It has intrinsic stored value. It has, the immaculate conception, as David likes to describe it, meaning that there's no issuer. And so, it stands in its own class. We view it as digital gold, and we want to acquire as much of it as we can for the American people in a budget-neutral way that doesn't cost the taxpayer a dime. I think it's really important to note that, under this president's leadership, he's actually working on acquiring assets for the American people rather than taking it away. And to answer your question about the digital assets national stockpile, I think that we welcome innovation in the space across multiple ecosystems. We want to see the U.S. really dominate the space in terms of digital, technological, financial innovation. And so with that, the reason that those were actually brought up, they're just the top 5 biggest market caps. I mean, there's this pretty simple explanation for it. But with that being said, there's going to be continued innovation here in the United States as it relates to all these ecosystems across many different platforms, and we want to make sure that all of these actors can continue to thrive and grow their businesses.
The SBR and digital assets initiative was signed into executive action a couple of weeks ago. What is the timeline of implementation? Do you know?
Well, let's go back to the president's first EO, executive order on digital assets, which was a day 3 priority for the administration. It lays out some crucial landmarks. We had the 30-day landmark with the interagency working group, which David Sachs is the chair and I'm the executive director over. That landmark basically asked all of these agencies to do an internal audit or review of everything that touched digital assets within their agencies. They produced those reports, we've come through them, and now we're approaching the 60-day landmark in which we're asking these interagency actors and other White House offices that are part of this group to produce recommendations. And what we'll do together is compile a report for the president to meet the 120-day landmark, in which it's comprehensive, and we say this is what we need to do to deliver on the president's promises to welcome in the golden age for digital assets in the United States, to make the United States the crypto capital of the planet. And part of that is what the president outlined at the summit last week. We have to get rid of any rules that undergird Operation Choke Point 2.0 that have stifled, institutional banks' ability to interact with digital asset firms.
That's actually proof of that in the works, or has happened.
Oh, I mean, look at what Hester's done at the SEC over the course of the past few weeks. Look at what the OCC did, I think, 2 Fridays ago. This is well in the works. And then you pair that with what's going on with legislation on the Hill. We have stablecoins just got out of Senate Banking Committee with an 18-6 bipartisan vote. This industry has tailwinds for the first time, not headwinds. I mean, this is a space that, at least in the United States, has been beaten down and kicked down over the last decade and a half, specifically under the Biden regulatory regime. They were victims of lawfare. They were treated differently than any other industry has ever been treated in the history of the United States. And it's high time that changes. And so between interagency activity, between what's happening with Congress, we hope to act as the administrator and or Sherpa between White House policy, industry, interagency, and what's happening on the Hill so that we can deliver on the president's promises.
Do you think Bitcoin Reserve is a potential boost for USD, meaning more people are going to buy Bitcoin and that results in more people buying T-bills?
Well, I think that Bitcoin being the grandfather that it is oftentimes, from a retail investment side, the first purchase that people have made. But look, we're not financial advisors, and I would, instruct anyone that's considering buying any asset class in the crypto space to, consult with a financial advisor before they do so. This is a naturally volatile market, and we understand that. But in the grand scheme of things, I feel as if the United States is finally in the forefront of leading the charge in terms of global adoption and mending the gap between institutional banking and digital asset technology. And Bitcoin plays a huge role of that just because of the nature of the way that it sits. So, with the SBR, I think it's just a monumental step forward in the sense of recognizing it for what it is, which is digital gold. The president talked about, or David's talked about building the digital Fort Knox around that and what it looks like. I think stables, honestly, to answer your question, it will probably drive U.S. dollar dominance globally as we see people start to actually have access to payment rails that are instantaneous in the way that financial marketplaces work. But all of these things come together to create a new financial marketplace.
Will the taxpayers pay for the SBR?
No, and that was outlined specifically in the EO. These have to be budget neutral ways of acquisition. There are countless ways in which we can do this. I've heard many great ideas over the last couple of weeks. Senator Lemus has in the Bitcoin Act one interesting idea, which is realizing the value of gold certificates from the 1970s are now worth a lot more today. You could take the difference there and apply that to acquiring more Bitcoin, but that's just one idea. That's just one that's publicly out there. I mean, we have, as the president likes to say, very high IQ people working on this stuff. And I don't think
the government's not going to buy new Bitcoiners, right? It's already Bitcoin that they own through acquisition through illegal channels. Is that what it is?
Well, that's currently what we have, but
right.
The EO has instructed us to look at creative opportunities to acquire more in this budget neutral ways that won't cost the taxpayers. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can do this. Currently it's tasked the Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of Commerce in order to look at these creative, innovative ways we can accomplish this goal. But we certainly want to acquire more. I've had people ask me, how much do you guys want to have? I'm like, that's like asking a country how much gold they want to have, right? We want to do it in a way that benefits the American people and continue to push this along.
The only thing I want to know about Trump, does he really like McDonald's?
How much fast food do you have in the White House?
I have not seen any fast food wrappers around the White House, but I know the president. He's certainly keen on McDonald's when he's traveling. I've seen that, just like many of you have publicly. But I just want to thank him for his leadership in the space, because if it weren't for him, if it weren't for everything that he's gone through over the course of the last really 8 to 9 years, we wouldn't be in this place as an industry today for digital assets, and none of us would have the ability to drive this change forward here in the United States.
How does it feel to be one of the youngest economic advisors or advisors overall?
Well, it's a privilege. I mean, going to work every day at the White House is an immense privilege that we have to take very seriously. And, I understand when I step foot on the Navy steps every day and go into my office that, I'm there to work on behalf of the American people and deliver for them. And to enact the president's priorities, in which, there was an absolute mandate for him to be elected, and it's time that we enact what he wants to do. So.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Bo.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much.